Hello, print friends, and welcome to the 7th episode of Pine Copper Lime, the internet's #1 printmaking podcast. I'm your host, Miranda Metcalf. I release an episode every 2 weeks, and on the off weeks, I publish an article on the Pine Copper Lime website featuring images and maybe a bit more information about the artists I'm going to interview. If you want to get in touch, Pine Copper Lime can be found on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and pinecopperlime.com. And don't forget, I'll be at the SGCI conference in March this year at the vendor fair, so make sure to come by, say hello, and get some merch. This week my guest is Mehdi Darvishi, a self-taught mezzotint artist from Iran. With Mehdi, I did something I've never done before on this podcast. I'd actually never spoken to him until we sat down for this interview. I knew his work from the world of contemporary printmaking and his awesome Instagram game, but I had no idea what he was like in real life, and I was in for an incredibly pleasant surprise. Not only is he a fascinating person who is extremely thoughtful and articulate about his own work, but he has a voice made for podcasting. This episode also has a slightly different feel than the ones I've published before. It's a bit slower, it's more contemplative, and we talk about death. We actually talk about death a lot. So, you'll find I'm kind of low energy in this one, but Mehdi has this incredible way of speaking that just blossoms into poetry. And it just kind of put me on my best behavior. Maybe like talking to a professor, or an aunt who works for the symphony or something. But anyway, get comfy and get ready to get down with the darkness with Mehdi Darvishi. Hi Mehdi, how's it going?
Hey, good, how are you?
Good, good. Thanks for sitting down and having a chat with me today.
Great.
So I'm familiar with you from seeing your work online and then also having the pleasure of seeing it in person at the International Mezzotint Festival in Yekaterinburg, I guess last year.
Oh yeah, it was last year.
A little over a year
such
ago.
A pleasure for me.
But would you mind introducing yourself a little bit to our listeners?
Yeah. My name is Mehdi Darvishi. I was born in Iran in a small city 5 hours far from Tehran named Dorud. I first moved to Tehran to study painting at the University of Tehran Faculty of Fine Arts. We don't have printmaking as a separate major in the university. So I just passed a course of printmaking with a professional printmaker named Mehdi. And it was the beginning of my journey in printmaking about 10 years ago.
You said you were growing up in a small town. How did you come to find art making? Did it have a strong artistic presence?
To be honest, we didn't have any artistic space in our city, but I was lucky enough to see an artist and actually an art teacher who studied in Tehran, and I just know the art history and especially how to read a book of art history, and it was just the beginning of my interest to art. Oh, in my hometown, there was no exhibition. We just had the chance to see some books in the library of my friend's house.
So at that point, were you immediately taken and decide that you wanted to go be an artist?
Yes, but maybe we should go back maybe a few more years. I used to paint, I used to copy caricatures and some paintings from the newspapers. And it was one of the most interesting things for me to do paintings with color pencils without having any knowledge. And, it was kind of fun for me. But when I grew up, and it was the time to choose my major, my education major, I just decided that I want to study it. We have it in the school. It was just a graphic design, but we had drawing classes, and I could draw, and I find it very interesting. I didn't want it to continue graphic design. And in that school, I met that teacher, and he introduced me some useful books, some painters from the art history, and I just began from seeing books and studying the art history.
Do you think that that ended up affecting the work that you make now? Because a lot of it has kind of classical elements in it. So, for instance,
Yes,
like your use of drapery is very,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely right. I always feel like that I have some great masters through the art history. I used to copy many of paintings through the art history just to learn how to make a composition, how to mix colors, and everything. I believe that my only master have been the art history masters.
And so is that the greats, like the Michelangelo, Leonardo, or do you have particular favorites beyond that?
I love all the art history masters actually, but yes, I love Da Vinci, Michelangelo, any of classic masters, and nowadays painters. I can say that one of the most favorite painters for me is Francis Bacon or Lucian Freud. So
You were talking about how, you started painting and it sounds like were self-taught to a certain extent before university,
yes,
and you were looking at painters and you were painting. How did you come to printmaking?
I can give an example from my childhood. Not that childhood when I wasn't a student, and it was just the beginning of my education. I was really interested in copying very realistic paintings because I like those details. And after that, when I knew art history masters, I used to try to do paintings like them. So these details have been always interesting for me from the beginning till now. And when I started printmaking, the first technique I learned was etching. And I should just do some drawings with a very tiny needle. And I found it very interesting. It was just interesting for me to have that focus on a very small piece of copper.
And so you were introduced to printmaking at university then?
Yeah. As I told you, mm, we don't have printmaking as a separate major in the universities in Iran. And I was lucky because we just have one course of printmaking as part of a painting MFA, a BFA, sorry. And this course was with a very professional printmaker named Mehdi Darvishi. I don't know if you know his works or not, but you might have seen his works in Russia.
Yeah, I don't recognize the name, but I
Yeah, I
bet
can write it down
I was
for
going to
you
say, I bet
later.
seeing it written, I may do a little bit better with
Yeah,
it.
you're right.
Yeah. So, what about your family? Were they artistic, or were they really supportive in your
No,
pursuits?
none of them are artists, and for them, that's all of them have particular jobs getting paid every month. Being an artist is not a very interesting thing, Yeah, especially for me because I don't have any side job.
Yeah.
And my life has so many ups and downs. Sometimes I earn a good money and sometimes I don't have any money. I love that because it makes me feel alive. But it's not an interesting thing for my family.
I think that that's a common thing that a lot of people, they just have that idea that you'll get a job and you'll work that job for 30 years until you
Yeah,
can't work it anymore. And you'll get
Exactly.
that paycheck every 2 weeks, and it'll be fine. And
I've never had any support from my family, actually. And I didn't want that support from my family because I choose this path, this way, and I just want to do my best for it. Fortunately, I received a very good result so far.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen later, but until now, I'm very satisfied with my choice.
So you talked a bit about finding etching and how that preciseness appealed to you, which
Yeah.
I could definitely see if you were particularly interested in the classics and the classical greats. That preciseness was there. How did you come to mezzotint?
When I learned how to make an etching, and I used to use it for the first time, I used to use it to copy a photography. And the texture was kind of interesting for me because I could make something very close to a photograph, in case of texture, I mean. Then I was thinking maybe I could use a white ink on a black paper. And it made it more interesting for me because at the same time, I just started working on a series with the main theme of death. And I see that subject as a really dark thing. And it could make more sense when I was printing with white ink on a black paper, bringing something out from a dark paper. The first time that I saw a mezzotint, I just have heard about it, but I didn't know that what was the mezzotint technique. I think it was the mezzotint festival almost 6 years ago, I think. I saw their page on Facebook. I found the works very interesting. And nobody knows what is mezzotint in Iran. And I just learned it from YouTube.
Wow.
You might know Guy Langevin.
I don't think so.
I'm sure you do, because he's a really great master of mezzotints.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was a French pronunciation. His name in English would be Guy Langevin.
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Just had to really Anglophile that one for me.
Yeah. And he has a video, instructional video on YouTube, and that was my only source of learning mezzotints.
That's amazing. And do you think that growing up, teaching yourself from books helped prepare you for learning mezzotint from YouTube?
Yeah. It was the same thing for everything that I have through my life. I learned how to play guitar only on my own and reading some books. It was maybe 15 years ago.
Do you still play guitar?
No, it's 10 years that I'm not playing, because when I came to Tehran to study art, I see that I need to be so serious in it if I wanted to be a successful person without having support from anybody.
Yeah.
So I just had to spend all my time on doing drawings, paintings, and beside that I started printmaking, and nowadays I have all my focus on mezzotint.
And are you pretty much just working with the black paper and the white ink?
No, not for now, because when I learned mezzotint, I see that this is the best result that I want from that image. I had something in my mind. I used to paint it, make some drawings, but none of the results was satisfying for me. But with mezzotint, I found it really perfect, at least for myself.
Your work that I'm the most familiar with is the work, as you mentioned, dealing with death. And, you create these really haunting, very still, very beautiful images of corpses under white sheets.
Yes.
And it's such a wonderful use of the mezzotint technique because
Thank you.
they're often in dark rooms, and so that effect that mezzotint has of bringing the light from the dark, as you say,
Yes, exactly.
seems really, really effective for what you create.
Thank you.
Yeah.
During the last few years that I've been working very hard on mezzotint, it's just only 4 years that I'm working on mezzotint. And in the first year, I was one of the finalists for Mezzotint Festival in Russia. And in the third year as well, I was one of the 3 finalists for the grand prize, as you were one of the jury members, I think. So I've been just working hard, but simultaneously, I was thinking why I should create an image with a technique that I can also make it with another technique very easy and in a very short time, like charcoal or Conte could definitely make the same. And this is a problem that I always have with so many of the mezzotints. For me, printmaking is not just a technique. You should use that technique in a correct way. And through the time that I was working, I wasn't satisfied because, I can make it really easy with the charcoal. Why should I make a mezzotint? Just for having some additions, it's not a good reason, at least for me, because I could make a drawing and then print it many times with a computer if I just want those copies. But in the last few works that I've made, those triptychs and quadriptychs.
Yeah, where you're reworking the plate, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes. To killing the plate as well as the character and everything. And this process is something that I think it's not possible to do it with any other drawing techniques. What do you think?
I agree. I think I do. I mean, how could you not? How could you not? But yeah, it's. I think that's one of the reasons that your work theoretically, I guess, stands out, or as the practice stands out, because they're beautifully rendered images. But as you know, there's a lot of mezzotint artists who can just make a really realistic image. As you said, it's part of mezzotint's appeal, and what its original use was to be reproduction because it has that quality. So your images are beautifully rendered, and then the subject matter is really striking. But on top of that, the way you rework the plate and have that side of it that lines up with the content is a really nice use of it.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to hearing that. It's a nice thing to hearing that. And, I always consider the technique as an alphabet. Everybody can know that alphabet, but only a few people can write a poem with that alphabet.
That's lovely. I really like that.
Yeah, that's what I really believe in it.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe I shouldn't work mezzotint anymore.
Please don't. We like you doing mezzotints.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that in your artist statement, you've got at least a couple of quotes from poets.
Yeah.
And then you bring it up here as well. Is poetry something that inspires you?
Yes, I can say that poetry is part of my life. because I grew up in Iran, which has a really good history in poetry.
Absolutely, yeah.
And also, nothing can touch me as a poem. And I really have been inspired with Ahmad Shamlou, the person that I mentioned his name in my statement. Some of his poems have really inspired me, and sometimes I feel like, oh, how close we are. For the quadriptych work, the one that is carrying a frame crossing in front of a graveyard.
Yes.
One day I was walking in a library and accidentally I opened a poem book, and I just found a poem very, very haunting, and I used it just for the title of that work. It says, "I should cry so bitterly because until 100 years later, no one of the people of my city will be alive." And this is something which is happening through that 4 stages work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The city is being disappeared, the graves are getting filled, the main character is gone, and the plate is dead as well.
Yeah. It's, what it reminds me of and what your work reminds me of more generally is that, those ideas that we learn when we're first learning about death as children.
Yeah.
And that, as you say, in 100 years, everyone we know will be dead.
Exactly.
And when you first learn it, it's so disturbing to you as a child. And then you grow up and you get coping mechanisms and you learn how to not think about it, or you learn how to justify it.
Or you accept it as part of the life.
But I like how your work doesn't shy away from it. It kind of brings, at least for me personally, it brings me back to remembering what it felt like when you first learned those things about the facts of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And, when you know that this is the most definite thing which is happening in every human being's life, for me, it wasn't disappointing. It wasn't something which makes me sad, because it's for everybody. There is no excuse for anybody, The only thing that makes it much more important for me is that when you consider that as a goal, as something like a destination, you will try to make the way to that destination as perfect as possible. I grew up in a not a poor family, but not a rich family, something average. They didn't have the power to support me, to catch all my dreams. But I believe that I'm catching all my dreams with my work.
That's lovely.
As an Iranian, it's really difficult to travel to the other countries. It's very difficult. Sometimes it's kind of impossible. I know some billionaires that couldn't have receive a visa with all those monies. So it's not just about the money.
And your art and your practice are opening the doors that $1 billion couldn't.
Yeah. And when I was working on my works, when I was at the beginning, I didn't even think about these things that are happening today. When I was making my works, every gallerist in Iran keep telling me that, oh, don't do that. That's a bitter subject. Oh, no, nobody wants to buy them. Today I'm selling well. I didn't expect these things are going to happen. But I just love the work that I was doing, and I just go for it. Went for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that during my time in commercial galleries and being that translator or that conduit for between artist and purchaser. But also just my experience in life is that even if people don't realize it consciously, the favorite thing of everyone is something that's genuine and comes from a genuine passion.
Yeah.
And whenever anyone tried to make work because they thought this is what sells, it never moved, you know? There's like a stink on it then.
Yeah, you're right.
And when people make...
Or sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes you can easily create some works for sale, and you can sell it, but it goes nowhere.
Yeah.
You just come as a wave. You go up and then falls down and will get disappeared.
Yeah, I guess that is more accurate because it's, you know, you can make an abstracted landscape and someone will buy it. But
of course.
And you know, no shade to abstracted landscapes. I've seen some lovely abstracted landscapes. But yeah, as you say, if it's done in a calculated way, it's, you know, there's only going to be a handful of people who want that. And then when it's gone, there's no evolution. There's nothing to grow into.
Nothing, yeah. Just a few amount of money that you're going to spend it in a few days and that's it.
Yeah.
It's like a routine job. Your job is doing paintings, beautiful paintings, and to sell them like someone who's baking bread.
Yeah. So you mentioned that when you were first starting, you had gallerists maybe suggesting that you shy away from dark subjects. So,
many times, yeah.
Yeah. So early on, were you working on death as well? Has this been a really consistent theme for you?
Yeah, it was exactly the first important subject that I've worked on during this last maybe 8 or 9 years. I had many different works beside them, but it has been the most important theme and subject in my works.
And I could see why people would respond to it. And, you know, having memento mori is a long, long tradition in the arts.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
Going back to the 1400s, and at least in European art history, probably older in other places. And to have it done in a beautiful way, that's even better, because part of one of the themes of the messages around the world is that to remain happy, you have to remember that this is temporal.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly.
What we choose matters because we die.
Yeah.
The choices we make matter, and what we choose to do with our time here matters because it ends.
Yes, exactly. That's what I believe in it.
So do you think that you'll stay with the theme? Is this something that you feel like you still have a lot more to explore in?
I never know. This is the work that demands me, rules me to do something, ask me to do something. And I never know what's going to happen with the next work. The only thing that I'm not satisfied with in mezzotint is that it takes a long time. For that triptych that you saw in Russia, it took me a year.
Yeah.
And that's why I have written down my name on one of that gravestones with the date of 2017. I penetrate the year of 2017 into that work. You know, I have many more ideas, and fortunately or not, I'm a perfectionist. I never get satisfied with the work. And this is why I always make the same image many times in different sizes to achieve the best result out of it.
That's definitely, I think, something that goes hand in hand with being very interested and very good at mezzotint is a personality that likes perfection.
Yeah, exactly. And the only bad thing about this timing is that I have so many ideas. I have so many sketches, but I never find enough time to make all of them. It's just maybe 7 years that I'm focused on printmaking, but I can only choose maybe 5, less than 10 of my works. It's a really few works for 8 years.
And I assume you rock all the plates yourself as well? Yeah.
Yeah, I always rock my own plates.
Yeah.
And when I go to a residency, I take a rock plate with me to have the most focus only on the scraping, burnishing, drawing, and printing. And for the piece that I sent you, it's a big piece, at least for a mezzotint.
Right.
And I'm going to keep working on the same plate. So it's going to be a huge work, maybe 70 centimeter by 4 meters.
Yeah.
With the quadriptych. I almost rocked the plate in 6 weeks, and I've been here working on it for 6 weeks, 9 to 9 every day, even in holidays and in weekends. Yeah, and I'm not still satisfied because some part of the works are unfinished. Needs maybe 2 more weeks to make it finished, to make the additions. Then I can go to scraping more for the second stage. And I'm going to make it in China Printmaking Museum in less than a month. Yeah.
So when you work, do you work from photographs or drawings that you've done, or a combination? What's your process like?
It's almost a combination. I always start from drawing. And when I get the final result of the composition, I make it in a real life. I make it as a stage. I make photographs, then print the photographs and start painting on them to make a final source for my image that I'm going to work on a plate. And during the process, when I feel like I should change something, I do. For example, the last work that I've done here, I mixed all of the clouds from the different countries that I've been before. And when I was working on the plate, suddenly I saw some clouds crossing in front of the window of my workshop. And just catch some of them exactly. Directly I draw them on the plate and I believe that part is one of the best part of my work.
I love that it's such a living process then for you.
Yeah, it is.
Well, would you mind telling all of my listeners where they can find out more about you and see your work, any kind of website or social media?
Of course, I'm so active on Instagram, with the same as my name, mehdi.darvishi. And also I have a Facebook page. I'm just thinking about having a website, but I haven't done anything yet.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing, really.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll definitely put a link to everything in the show notes for this.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And thank you so much for speaking with me. This was great to talk Prince and life and death and everything else.
Thank you. It was a pleasure hearing your sound. And I wish we will meet somewhere in this small sphere. It doesn't matter where. Yeah, it's the print world, and it's very small.
Yes, that's one of the great things about it, for sure.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's our show for this week. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Anything of interest you can find in the show notes. And if you can't find it there, go ahead and drop me a line at hello@pinecopperlime.com, and I'll track it down for you. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with editing help from Timothy Pauschak and music by Joshua Weber. I'll see you in 2 weeks.